All right, welcome back for another episode of Bargain Hunters. This is the video series where I'm talking about those books you can still find relatively cheap. This is basically going to be $20 and under first appearances. So these are things that are not too expensive. You should be able to fit into your budget if you're interested and go out and grab yourself some first appearances if you are interested in these topics. This is kind of a series that I decided to do in lieu of continuing on with dollar bin digging, as I was just kind of running out of topics for those dollar bins. You might still find many of these books in dollar bins, but I didn't want to limit myself in that way that we only can say these are, dollar bin books. Some of these books could be 15, 20 bucks, but still could be considered a bargain depending on, what you're looking for. Now, hopefully you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. And if you want to see the topic that I got for you this week, just hang on for a few seconds after the intro, and I will be right back. All right, as I mentioned, this week we have a special topic. We will be doing these $20 and under first appearances. And this specific list actually spun out of a segment that Marco did on the tax show a few weeks ago when we had our G.I. Joe episode. And he did some under the radar G.I. Joe first appearances. So we may see a couple of those mixed in here with a few more because there are plenty of G.I. Joe first that you can get still relatively cheap. And as we have the new Skybound series, going on and starting basically a new era for the G.I. Joe franchise, these might be some fun books to go back and look for their first appearances if, again, you find them interesting. So that is what we are looking at this week. We are going to be looking at G.I. Joe Real American Hero Part 1. I say Part 1 because, like I mentioned, there's a lot. And I'm going to cover about 10 books, 10 comics, I think, this week. And then we've got enough to do another part or two and still have plenty to talk about. So let's not waste any time and let's get right into it and get to our first comic. And we're not going to go, again, with the big boy books. Yes, we know G.I. Joe 1, tons of first appearances. Even G.I. Joe 2, tons of first appearances. But those are too expensive for our purposes here because they are not $20 and under. Those are more expensive books these days. So we are looking more on the cheaper end. And with that, you'll be surprised at some of the characters you can still find for cheap, starting off with this little gem, number 11. So issue 11 of G.I. Joe Real American Hero has a handful of first appearances. Granted, not all the characters are top-notch characters, but you'll see here there is plenty of bang for your buck if you're just trying to go and collect, again, first appearances of some Joes that we might see come back and be reintroduced in the new Skybound universe, or maybe we'll see them once again in Larry Hama continuing the Real American Hero franchise as well. But let's kick it off with Airborne. So Airborne, there's a picture of the figure. You remember him. He's one of those early Joes as well. Sky jump, parachute kind of guy, air jump kind of thing. Here's his first appearances in this issue here. The name's Airborne. I'm new on the job and in town. So there you go. First appearance there in number 11. But number 11 doesn't just have Airborne's first appearances. We also get other bits as well. We get a tease, just a cameo. We can admit this is a cameo of Destro because we don't really see him. He's in shadow, and it really is. I would consider this a cameo because we don't really get fully introduced to him. He's there. He's in a few panels, but he's all in shadow, plenty of dialogue, but we only see bits and pieces. We see the arm, the gauntlets, etc., but we don't actually get that full reveal in this particular issue. We also get G.I. Joe's resident medic at the time, Doc. Doc first appears in this issue as well. He's early on with a few other Joes as well. I mean, we can see Snake Eyes is there, and I believe Rock and Roll. But again, their first appearance is already passed and a little bit too pricey. But we got Doc right down there in the bottom panel. There is again, some of these aren't actually the first time you see them in the comic. I just try to find a nice little a bit from them inside the comic where their name is even referred to, and you get a little bit of a reveal. Another character, another classic, Gung Ho. Gung Ho can also be found in this issue. So that's what, 4 or 5 already first appearances that we got in issue 11. Gung Ho. Yeah, I remember him too as a figure. He had the teal camouflage. I don't know what you're gonna hide from in teal camouflage, but it still was kind of a cool figure, and he had that, a big old stash. and he's right here in the thick of things again in the beginning, along with a couple of another character we're going to get to in a second. But in this panel, we're seeing Gung Ho. He's not wearing the teal in this, but he does have that hat and the stash. And then he's lying down there on the bottom with the next new character, inappropriately a double entendre type named Snow Job. So we also get Snow Job, our resident G.I. Joe skier, and first Arctic gear type of character from the line. Yeah, he's also here again. You saw him right there with Gung Ho down below. So Gung Ho and Snow Job and Doc are all right here rushing in on this panel again for this issue. And we are still not done because there is still at least one more first appearance that I should share with you, and that is a man Wild Bill flying the G.I. Joe copter throughout, from the toy line. He came with, one of the first G.I. Joe copters. But Wild Bill also is here in the beginning of this book. Actually, it doesn't really look the same as a character as the toy, but that is Wild Bill right there. A similar mustache, even though it's a different hair color, different outfits, a different color. It is what we got. And look, hey, Doc, Snow Job sitting right there. So plenty of first appearances in this issue 11. And just to give you a sense of what this one might do, here, copies of this have sold for as cheap as $1.48, $1.99, along with issue 12, $4. And then you see there's a $20 sale and a $9 sale. So a little bit inconsistent on the pricing, but you can find these things pretty cheap if you go out there digging. Granted, you might not find 9/8 candidates all the time, but we can collect beyond just 9.8s and CGC books. We can. There's nothing wrong with it. So just know what you're paying for. Know what you're buying. Have a good sense of the price. And buy what you like. Those are what have sold. What's available? You can still get this for $20. Yes, there's $20 copies. There's $12 copies. There's $1 copies. Granted, that cover's ripped for $1. So you're going to get that for $1. You're getting a ripped cover. But then you also see $15 and $20. So once again, in our range, and a book that you can get with a plethora of first appearances. Now, there's an example. Not all of these books are going to have that many first appearances, but some will have multiples. So our next book is another one that you probably know, and this is issue 14. We got Destro here again. He's on the cover, front and center. And this one, well, again, a couple of firsts in here. Starting off, and if you notice, these are all running through alphabetical, so that's where we're at. Ace. So we'll start with Ace. G.I. Joe pilot, came with the one jet. I can't think of the names of all the toys and the jets, but he was here right there. Ace. You can even see his call signs right there on the jet. You see the Tomcat, looks like the Top Gun plane. That's where you got to Ace. He came with the plane, and here he comes in issue 14. Not only do we get Ace in this issue, but we also get that, and again, he's on the cover. We get more of that full reveal of Destro. I mean, apart from him being on the cover, he's throughout this book, and you get fully introduced to Destro. I mean, there's Baroness, and once again, big bad Destro. I like Destro. Underrated, character for the most part, because you consider he is one of the main villains of the G.I. Joe franchise. I mean, along with Cobra Commander, obviously, and you got Baroness, Major Blood, even, who we'll also get to in a second. But look, Destro, $20. $20 got issues 13 and 14, and then $20 got somebody else this issue. Best offer on $10 got a mid-grade copy for somebody. Again, somebody $325, $850. So those are some recent sales. You can see these books can go cheap. And again, they may not all be 9/8. That one said mid-grade. Their $325 was a 6.0. But still, nothing wrong with getting a book with a little bit of wear and tear, a little bit of love that has been read. Because whether you're getting it just for yourself or collecting down the line, well, those are two different conversations. You do what you want to do, hobby how you want to hobby. But point of this series is you can find affordable copies of comics if you go and look. And to see what's available, yes, $20 copies, $15 copies, even $10 starting at auction. And you can see where it goes from there. You get yourself a first Destro and Ace. That said, there's two. Let's move on. I mentioned his name. He's the next one in this issue. He's not on the cover, unfortunately, but issue 15 does have another first appearance in it, and that is one Major Blood. another one of the Cobra baddies. Pretty cool look to him. I think I know a lot of people make fun of him because he's kind of a I don't want to say a punching bag for the Joes like in the cartoons, always losing, always getting defeated, but still pretty cool figure when you go back. He had like that weird sleeve thing going on. But Major Blood does show up in this issue 15 here. Granted, he is, and you'll notice a lot of the old G.I. Joe comics, a lot of them are doing the salute that is inappropriate today, but that's how they hailed Cobra. So just remember that. But Major Blood, this is a tricky one in that it's actually more expensive than Destro. And there are copies that are more expensive in our $20 range, but there are still plenty you can get under our marker. 15, 10 bucks. Best offers on $15 and $18. Yeah, I mean, we're talking, there's some mid-grades mixed in. There's some fine copies mixed in. There's even 8.5s mixed in, but copies that you can get nonetheless. Meanwhile, affordable copies to go and buy on the market. I actually stretched this a little bit more to give us more of a range. Yes, some of these prices are, 22 bucks and 25 bucks, but some of these accept best offers, so you can make an offer and get it hopefully underneath that $20 mark. So that's why I put a little bit more here, just to give you some more options, because you can even see that there's some, $18 and just over at $20.40, and then $1 starting bid at auction. Otherwise, there's not a lot of available copies because for whatever reason, a lot of people want like 30, 35, $30 plus for first Major Blood, which I thought was a bit surprising considering the price of Destro. That said, you could still find copies. So go out, go digging, go looking, and see what you can find. Moving on to our next book, we have issue, again, I'm not going to cover all of these. I mean, these issues are going in order, but we will come back and fill in some gaps in later shows. Try to stay a little bit, well, you'll see. We'll get there. Issue 16. So issue 16, we get the first appearance of Covergirl. Not the greatest Joe in the world, not the best sculpted figure in the world, but one of the few female G.I. Joe characters. And I believe the second one, well, actually third one if you count. You got Scarlet and you had Baroness, and then I think she was next, Covergirl, because she came in before Jinx, she came in before Lady J, but she came in with that weird Wolverine vehicle, not the mutant Wolverine, but I believe that's what it was called. She had this weird little tank thing with like rockets on it. But in the comic, here you go, in issue 16, there's her first appearance. They kind of play her up a little bit cliche. I mean, she's checking her nails, for God's sakes. But again, with the codename Covergirl, that's kind of the angle they were going for, even though that is a horrible haircut. Horrible haircut on the toy, horrible haircut in the comic. But, yeah, there you go. Covergirl. She's not alone. You'll also see another character there on these panels that have their goggles. He's got his mine detector. No, that is not Gary Drayton on Oak Island. That is Tripwire. The character of Tripwire, our resident mine detector, because, you need him. You don't want to get blown up, right? But there you go. He's got his metal detector. He's got a stack of mines, too, that you can put in his backpack, which is kind of fun. And as I showed you already, he was on that same page, first being introduced, along with the Covergirl there. As you can see, here's Tripwire right there. So these two, you can find these two very, very cheap, too. Well, actually, maybe not very. 10, 12, 20 bucks. Some best offers mixed in there as well. Available copies. Again, not as many, but $10 to $18 are some copies that you can grab for these two. And again, some of these, it's $13, and that's only a 5.0. So prices are starting to rise on these G.I. Joe books, these classic ones. But if you go digging and you go out soon before everybody goes and starts finding these, you might still get lucky and find some of these G.I. Joe first for a good price. So get out there and get digging. There's plenty to find, especially if you know which issue numbers you're looking for, because the characters that you're looking for are not always on the cover, as you can see here. This is, was that Destro, on the cover there, but it's not, it's not Covergirl. It's not Tripwire. But let's move on. Let's get to our next book. And once again, Destro front and center on issue 22. But this issue is not about Destro. This issue is about, well, Flint was the main guy originally, but then we got Duke. And I think when everybody thinks back on Real American, G.I. Joe, they think about Duke. Duke is the Cyclops. He is the lead character, just the main man, whatever you want to call him. But Duke got his own miniseries rolling out of Skybound, which is actually pretty good. If you read that Duke series out of Skybound, I know a lot of people crap on Duke because he's not the most interesting character because he has to play that kind of Boy Scout, clean cut, just again, leader character, the generic leader type of characters. Not always the most interesting, but that Duke series is pretty good out of Skybound, and you can still get Duke's first appearance for a relatively decent price. So here you go, Duke showing up here. There's another good first in here as well. My man, who's also right on panel and on screen there with him, Roadblock, our resident rhyming heavy gunner. Roadblock, also first appearance here. So this is a good twofer, in my opinion. And just again, showing him introducing himself as he shows up as well. They call me Roadblock. I'm the new heavy machine gunner on the G.I. Joe team. You know, rock and roll. Not happy to see him. That said, if you can find it, you should be happy to find this in a box for, under $20, $7, $7, $10. That's Duke and Roadblock. Duke and Roadblock in this one. Available copies, plenty of copies available. Granted, mid-grade newsstands, $10, $9, $5, $6, $8, $16. I mean, it runs a little bit of the gamut. Again, you got to check the grade. You got to look at the pictures. Or, again, go dig at your stores. Go support your local comic shops. You don't have to do all your buying on eBay. I know I always show eBay prices, but that's because that's the easiest market that we all pretty much have access to, that I can show you pricing and show you available copies, etc., to give you a frame of reference. But generally, if you go to actual stores, you will most of the time, find yourself some better prices than what you'll find online. So just keep that in mind as well. Go dig in those boxes. Go support your local shops. Moving on. So from there, we're going to go to issue 24. A couple more issues in. Going to go with issue 24. We got Roadblock, got Storm Shadow here. Yeah, we had to skip Storm Shadows first because he was issue 21, the silent issue, which is a very, very pricey book. So we can't put it in here. We can't put it in as Bargain Hunters. But obviously, if you could find issue 21, that is a great book to get. Apart from it being the silent issue, it is Storm Shadows first. And everybody loves Storm Shadow because everybody loves a ninja. But with that said, this issue, also an underrated character, a character I always really loved. It was one of my favorite figures because you get a cool look. You had the nighttime camo, Firefly. Firefly was always a cool character to me. Plus, he had that pretty cool machine gun. But Firefly first appears here in issue 24. He's down below, Baroness introducing him, as well as the character who's right next to him, who actually is unnamed. They just say he's the best pilot in all of Cobra, and that is Wild Weasel, who I believe came with the Rattler. But Wild Weasel also first appears here in, again, right next to Firefly. They're coming together. So you get both of those. And as an added little bonus, right at the tail end of this book, we do get a cameo of our Master of Disguise, Zartan. Because he is right here at the end as kind of a drop-in character. So unlike what you might argue of what's a cameo, first full, etc., unlike, say, Wolverine at the end of Hulk 180, Zartan doesn't speak. He's only in that last panel, and his name is revealed, but he doesn't say it. Like the whole thing with Wolverine, he basically introduces himself in that last splash, etc. But anyway, we'll call this cameo of Zartan, but he got those other first with Firefly and Wild Weasel to carry the load on this one, which is also $10 to $20, some 13s and 14s mixed in there as well. Still decently affordable book. Copies available, as you can see, right around that $20 mark. And some of them take best offers, so maybe you can make an offer and get it for a little bit cheaper. Now, with that cameo, you know who's showing up next, and he's right here on the cover of issue 25. But I told you, I'm introducing these alphabetically, so Zartan ain't going to be first on our list because this is another book, issue 25, anniversary type milestone issue with the numbering, 25. I don't know why. I mean, quarter of 100, I guess. Whatever. There are a lot of first appearances in this one as well. So let's get right into it. You got Wild Bill there on the cover, and is it the Dragonfly? I can't remember what it was called, but Chopper from the toy. We get Cutter. Cutter drove the hovercraft. You remember that big ass hovercraft figure, vehicle? Cutter drove that. Looks like he's part of the Coast Guard. Actually, it looks like a little bit like my father-in-law, except without the red hair. But Cutter first appears right here in this issue 25, along with some other characters that you'll see. That's actually the next character in his weird little sweater next to him. That's Deep Six, who is another Joe first that we have in this one. This time out, I didn't do everything alphabetical because I wanted to keep the Joes together and the Cobras separate. So we're doing all the Joes first. So we get Deep Six, not the greatest, most playable character in the world, but yeah, this was another Joe, and he is also in this issue in his outfit, in his weird little water vehicle that he had as well. But you get Deep Sixes first, but then another character who had a great side figure with it. You got Mutt and Junkyard. So Junkyard was awesome. You just get it's like a Rottweiler along with Mutt, who had a pretty cool mask for a figure. There weren't a lot of like removable mask type figures, and this was one of those early ones. So Mutt and Junkyard also first show up in this issue. You can see, Junkyard right up there, and then Mutt's also. Again, it's also kind of on the same panel, but they're throughout the book. They're throughout the book as well. But those are the Joes that first show up in issue 25. Then we've got a couple of the Cobra guys. Well, more specifically, the Dreadnoks. And the Dreadnoks basically just showed up at the end of the first issue of Cobra Commander. Cobra Commander issue 2 is coming out on Wednesday. I'm looking forward to that. And we know we're getting more of these dudes because they are on the covers. They're being spotlighted. So we're getting characters like Buzzer. And Buzzer came with like a chainsaw. He is on the 1 in 25 cover of Cobra Commander 2 that has this, sort of card back splash. He first appears in here. Granted, these dudes are not named, but these are the Dreadnoks. In this first issue, we don't get all their names. We don't get introduced to them, but they basically all show up with Zartan. So, Buzzer, he's right there. We also get his compadres, Ripper, who had this weird jackhammer thing. Not the coolest weapon, but all right, whatever. He had that kind of punk look to him. All of them had this kind of like a weird 80s, early 80s kind of punk styling to them. But Ripper also here in the background there behind Buzzer in that middle panel, but unnamed. He doesn't have his goggle glasses on. And then we also got the third guy, Torch, who had a little obviously like a blowtorch type of toy. He also is in this issue, but on a different page. He comes in bringing in the Cobras to introduce him to Zartan. So, Torch. And as I mentioned, this issue, he's basically throughout. We get the first full of Zartan. So we had that little cameo at the end of 24, but he is throughout this issue and on the cover of this issue, along with some of these cool little vehicles. Like he had that, I don't know, these are fun little swamp vehicles. Best thing about G.I. Joes were the vehicles that, I don't know. My favorite toy line as a kid. I love Transformers, but G.I. Joe was probably my favorite. With that said, issue 25, with all those firsts, you would think would be pretty expensive, but it's not. It's still in that 15. Well, you can see some could go a little higher. There is a $25 sale. So I wanted to show you it could go a little bit over, but there's still plenty you can find in our range. $6 copy sold for, or $15, just about 20, 25. Available copies 15, 12. Yes, there are some that are over our $20 mark, but by and large, you can still find $10 and $15 copies. So get out there looking. Wanted to talk about the Dreadnoks a little bit because, again, they're showed up and they're going to show up in Cobra Commander this week. So it's kind of topical. There are a lot of them, though. So we're going to have to pick them up on the next show because I was going to do all of them, but then I figured I'd be here all day. I don't want to make this too long of a show. And I want to be on about half an hour. So I only got a couple more books for you. And there's another topic I also wanted to touch on based off of that Cobra Commander series. So one more. We saw her show up, Dreadnok. She's not on the cover, but issue 50, another milestone edition, which does give us a special missions, little sneak preview. But Zarana. So another female figure earlier, I guess, in the toy line. Zartan, the Dreadnoks, you get Zarana. She also is appearing in that Cobra Commander series, introduced here right at the end of this issue. So she introduces herself, though, at least. as opposed to Zartan, who's just standing there. But she's right here at the end of issue 50. With that, copies, $6, $10, $4, even $5, where it's packaged with issues 50 and 51. So, once again, not too expensive, very affordable book if you want to get Zarana's first. $6 to $10, copies available for $3. $6, $5. So, easily affordable book. And something to keep an eye on. You know, this is something you might find in a dollar bin. If you can find some old Joe books in the dollar bins, I always love grabbing those. But gonna move away from the Dreadnoks. Again, we'll come back to them because there's a few more. There's Road Pig and Zanzibar and Zarana's brother still to cover. Get to them another time. But so we're gonna pivot away from the G.I. Joe Real American Hero series, the Marvel run, because surprisingly, these characters who were in the G.I. Joe movie didn't show up in the comics until later with the Devil's Due run of comics. And this is the Cobra-La stuff, which again is running in the Cobra Commander series. I didn't think anybody would go back to this stuff, but they did. First time they show up, issue 4 of G.I. Joe versus Transformers 2. So not even the first crossover from Devil's Due, the second crossover. In the 4th issue, we get introduced to Cobra-La. I'm only showing you one of the henchmen for the group because it's the group as a whole, but this is also the only way for me to show you that, you know, the extra dudes, the cannon fodder. But they all appear here in this issue along with we'll get to Nemesis Enforcer, and even though they're not naming her, that's the what's her name, Python, whatever. Anyway, we'll get to her in a second too. So Cobra-La as a group, they all show up. And like I said, mentioning Nemesis Enforcer, dude with bat wings. Granted, in the cartoons and the movies, he was much bigger, but in the figure, he's the same size as everybody else. But in the cartoon, he looked like a much bigger dude. And he had bat wings, which you do still get with the figure, but it's not as impressive. And Nemesis Enforcer, again, you can see him. He's right there in the middle of this same panel for reveal. And Pythona was her name. You can see that's her, right? When you look on online resources, they say her first appearance is in the next issue I'm going to cover, but that was her, right? That's her. She's got the hood up, but that's her. So with that, this issue 4 doesn't sell all that often. Not that it's impossible to find or anything like that, but it's just one of those things. I mean, look, it's sold in this lot of with the complete set with another issue for $10. So it is not an expensive comic at all. But it's not easy to find on its own. I mean, there's a copy on its own that's $10 almost, well, $9, and then you got the 4-issue miniseries for $20. But again, not a lot of listings, but it is something you can go and find if you want those Cobra-La firsts. But you notice somebody was missing from that group because he didn't show up in that series. He didn't pop up until this G.I. Joe versus Transformers Black Horizon series that came a little bit later. This is 2007. This is well after the G.I. Joe movie was like 87, 88, probably somewhere in that range. So these characters didn't show up in comics until this much later. There are 2 covers on this. This is the cover A. You might see this more often than not because the dude we're talking about here is right there. Globulus, Pythona, even Nemesis Enforcer with Unicron are on this B cover. So this is the cover I would prefer if I was out there shopping because it's got the baddies on there. But Globulus, yep, the Snake Man himself. I know, it's silly. It was silly even on the G.I. Joe cartoon movie. But somehow it just seems less silly when I was reading in that Cobra Commander comic. And he's got a ridiculous name. Globulus. There you go. He's there. So he's throughout this book. There's more than one panel, but this was the first panel when he showed up. Dr. Mindbender was showing up to talk to him. I want to see Lord Globulus. I want to talk to him. So that's where we get that introduction panel down below. But then he is throughout this book, and you get some better shots of him. So it's not just this, but that's the only one I'm going to show you. Don't want to get too deep into showing you the full comic or anything. Go out and go pick it up for yourself because you can, because it's not that expensive. It's $4, $6, $8. Look, $20 will get you both issues of this one. I think this is only a 2-issue series. This Black Horizon, so you can get both issues for only for $20 there. And available copies You can see $5 to $8, and then the whole series for 15, etc. Once again, all affordable things, all things that you can invest in for cheap if you're so inclined. And with that, that is my part one for this G.I. Joe Bargain Hunters show. So I'll get to more. Like as I mentioned, there's plenty more to cover, plenty more we'll get back to. I'll probably space that out a little bit because I know you guys still want more Chasing Ghosts and you want some of the other things that I've done shows on, and I only had so much time. So Tuesdays has become my rotational day. I mix in trade secrets, the occasional toy video, last to know, hidden gems, even just a regular old hidden gems. I haven't done one of those in a while, but plenty, plenty of content. We got more content and just not enough time. But with that all said, hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you found some of this information useful, helpful, and interesting. And if you want to go hunt some G.I. Joe stuff, hopefully I gave you some fun things that you can go and find for cheap. And with that all said, come back tomorrow for the tax show, and I'll see you all later with some more content. All right, later.